Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel.
Well, I'm a little miffed right now because I really want to continue and find out about how you took it from your first thing in Whole Foods and got it up to over 200 million in revenue. But we're going to have to come back because I want to hear about Undaunted, the book.
Yeah.
And what got you to the point where you said, I've got to write a book on this?
So I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I'm also an accidental author because that was never on my bucket list to write a book. But I was taking notes along the way because when I would take notes on some of these stories that, I had no one else to talk to about it because most of my friends were not in the beverage industry and I would run into things. So anyway, my notes were about 600 pages over the years. And I kept going back and reading the notes thinking that I would be able to solve the problems along the way.
Right.
And as I was doing that, and I think I was speaking at a conference at one point, and I thought, there's so many stories that I have that even if you're not in the beverage industry, are really applicable to people and on, getting started, on figuring out, what mistakes you made along the way, moving forward, all these thoughts that I've had that I would share with audiences. And I phoned a friend who has written many books. And I said, so how do I take my notes and put them into some format that could help a lot of people? And she said, you mean write a book? And I said, yeah, I guess. And so probably the hardest thing was to actually take those 600 pages and whittle them down. I've easily got a second book, possibly
self-editing is the hardest thing, isn't it?
But yeah, and I hired actually somebody to help me, really kind of drill it down. But it's interesting. I think that the thinking in writing this book was that I am a female entrepreneur. I'm a female CEO. And I think many, many publishers that I brought it to felt like the audience would be really small, that it was that, I was a female executive.
Man, it's amazing how they just naturally fall into the wrong assumption on everything.
Yeah. And again, there's your doubters, right? And so I'm like, I don't think so. Like, they said, has the tech industry burned you in some way? No, I don't know. I guess like if I really thought hard about it, but I just kept moving forward. I kept figuring out how to keep moving forward and stay curious and keep learning along the way. And so it's the same thing with actually publishing a book. Finally, I ran into Harper Leadership, part of HarperCollins. And, what they realized is they're like, look, we're going to give it a try. There aren't very many at that time when it was published. There aren't very many women executives who have written books and kind of shared their story that have been successful. And I said, well, have a lot of them written books? And no, I said, okay, well, also there aren't very many of us either. So, maybe it's time.
Yeah.
And, what's the worst that can happen? And so this book is like, I think what is most interesting and exciting for me is it's really exactly what I thought was. It wasn't narrow at all. I have plenty of men, plenty of people outside of in the beverage industry that have read this book, that it's inspired them. I've had a lot of C-suite executives that are, especially over the last couple of years, started to figure out, why haven't I gone and done something? I've always sort of thought about this idea, but I've never found the time. I've never wanted to take the risk. And if this book can inspire people to actually go out and live,
Yeah.
I'm done. Right. Yeah. I've done my job.
Yeah.
And if we can, I mean, there's humor in there. Everybody loves my husband, Theo, after reading this book. And there's a section in there about mold in the water in the early days where we didn't know how to make the product. And he was educating Whole Foods about the fact that they shouldn't kick us out of the store because they had blue cheese in the store. And, it was, and so again, like, I think just being able to.
What comes to me from this, and it relates, that you can't hear, folks, you're listening to this, you can't hear this too much. Every new idea is a bad idea until it's not, to everybody else, it's a bad idea. And every idea you come up, that won't work until it does. So don't be surprised. Like, I'll give you an example. It's like when they came up with the fax machine, somebody came up with a fax machine and they showed it. They said, well, who will buy something like this? Unless he's got one over there, why would I buy one? And so,
100%. And I think it's like, it takes one person to come up with these ideas, and make them successful, and then they're a genius. My favorite thing to do today is run into people who were my biggest doubters. Yeah. And I love tons of people in Silicon Valley who thought it was absolutely crazy that I was jumping off the tech track to go and start my own beverage company. That was not a very smart thing to do in their mind. And they thought I was going to fail. And I'm like, wait, just a minute ago, you were telling me how great I was, that I was going to do awesome in tech and I was hireable. And now I wouldn't be because I went and took a risk. And so if this risk doesn't work out, can I go back to that? Right. And the answer is yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? I mean, the best employees that I've hired over the years are the ones that have failed at something. And the ones that can actually own. I'm sure you've got people that you can think of that will actually tell you exactly why it failed.
Right.
It doesn't mean that they're a failure.
Yeah, right.
And I think like that's the thing that, it actually ends up that if you go out and challenge yourself and it doesn't work out, that may actually help you to figure out what you really want to be doing, what you're
right. It could be it's a fail. Those failures are usually in areas that you needed to fail in because you needed a wake-up call and you needed abrupt change of direction, or to get more serious about something, or I know when I got embezzled out of I don't know how many millions of dollars, and by my 16-year closest personal assistant, it was like, yep, my fault. I shouldn't have let her anywhere near the money. It's just like, but for every million, what I said to myself is, for every million I lost, that's going to be 10 to 20 million that I'm going to save down the road, because I'm not going to let that happen to me again. But that happens to people all the time. I've had,
all the time.
I could tell you unbelievable stories, of my billionaire buddy who he got screwed so many times by accountants, finally got his cousin in there. My cousin. And then he found out his cousin, when he went to buy my friend went to Savannah to buy him a Gulfstream, he also bought himself a twin engine plane for himself as a bonus. And he kept doing things like this. Like he bought a 2,600 acre property for my friend, and then across the street he bought an 800-acre thing as a little bonus for himself. And when he got so arrogant, one year he gave himself, this is an account, gave himself $1 million Christmas bonus. And finally, my oblivious billionaire buddy, finally that got his attention. He said, I always wondered why all these corporations, when you want to get a check out of them, it had to go through 3 or 4 or 5 different levels. He said, now I understand. He said, now if you want to get a check out of me, you've got to do the same thing. But we all make those mistakes. But, that happens, That's life teaching us lessons.
No, exactly. And I think that it's really, it is life teaching us lessons, but we have to put ourselves into those places. I think especially if we are good at something. People expect, well, if you're good at something, then you just keep rising, right? And then you, like I said earlier, maybe you start managing people or whatever, but the creation, the sticky stuff, the hard stuff, that you have to make conscious decisions to go and do that, because everyone else around you, family and friends, are the worst. They don't want you to take those risks.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that it's up to you. And you've got to be really disciplined to, really go and make those things happen. Otherwise, they will not happen.
Next time, Kara, we're going to talk about your podcast. And that's one of the things I wish we had time to talk about here. But we'll do that whenever we set up next time.
I love it.
I got the idea that your podcast is pretty darn powerful, and people would get a real, not only a kick, but they get a lot of information from it. Tell them the name of your podcast.
So it's called The Kara Goldin Show. And it's funny, Patty Sellers, who was the editor-in-chief of Fortune for many, many years and started the Fortune Most Powerful Women. She interviewed me for something last week, and she was asking me about it. And she said, how many people say no to coming on your show? Because you've had amazing people, Jeff Immelt from GE and Chip Wilson from Lululemon. And I think when somebody has operated a company as I have and is interviewing these people, I ask questions that I'm curious about. Right. And it ends up to be a dialogue that is more about, operating. It's like your colleagues that you're talking versus journalists interviewing them. And so it's a lot of fun. But it's also, as I said to Patty, it's the guests I think are pretty unique. They're not going on a lot of other shows because I think a lot of people don't ask them, because they think, oh, they're too high level, they're too this, they're too this. And I've met a lot of them along the way, and I just call them and I say, I just need an hour, to have this conversation. But the stuff that you'll learn about failure, about forming boards, about what they wish they would have done. Jeff Immelt in particular, when I interviewed him, I'll never forget. I didn't expect, the first thing I said to him is, how do you follow Jack Welch? That must have just been did you walk in the door that morning and thought, I'm ugly? And what were you thinking? And I didn't realize this, but his first official day on the job was 9/11.
Wow. I didn't know that either.
So he said he couldn't even think about following Jack Welch because he had so many businesses that were affected by 9/11. And frankly, businesses that he shouldn't have been in. It was just so, anyway. So I think,
hats off to Jack Welch for picking the right day to get out.
Totally. But again, you start to really get inside the mind of these people that are creating things that are kind of, against the grain of what people think is actually going to happen. So But thank you for bringing that up.
This has been so much fun, and we're definitely going to have to do it again. And,
I would love to. That sounds terrific.
I'm excited I'm going to go out and buy some of that hint, because I've tried, why I've gotten turned off of, because I've tried the ones that are the bad ones, with the flavored stuff. And it's
Exactly.
like, man, this is sour. And, but I didn't know hint was out there. So I'm going to go straight to get some hint right now.
And you can get it online as well. And it's, nationwide at Costco and Target and Walmart, and it's Whole Foods everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you for coming up with the idea and putting it through and making it available. So
thank you.
I'm going to look forward over the next few years to see it continue to expand and grow. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.